Hi, I don't know if this is a story or a catharsis, maybe a bit of both. I live in the south of the country. To avoid going into too much detail, I'll just say it's a small place where people have known you since you were a kid and rumors travel faster than the wind. I was born and raised here in a conservative, rural environment. Almost 2 years ago I met Eric. He was unlike anyone I'd ever met. He had recently moved from a bigger, more open city where, according to him, people weren't so concerned with each other's lives. I was drawn to him from the very first second. He had this quiet confidence, this way of walking through the world as if he had it all figured out. For me, who had spent my whole life hiding, meeting someone like that was like seeing the sun for the first time. We met on a Friday, and by the following Wednesday we were a couple. It was fast, intense, explosive, but not fake. Not for me. They were the 2 best years of my life. Until everything fell apart because of a simple phone. My cell phone died a couple weeks ago. Black screen wouldn't turn on, nothing. Eric offered to lend me an old email he wasn't using anymore. I thought it was a kind gesture. He just asked if he could delete a few unimportant things. He did it in front of me, cleaned it up, and gave it to me. Without suspecting anything, I started recovering my accounts and apps. Everything seemed normal, until I noticed something strange. When I went to set up my email, I saw that his was still linked. I got up from the sofa to warn him, but then something popped up on the screen. A notification of a new email, and below it, a list of recent emails. All from the same person, Andrea. And that's when my heart sank. I didn't want to be nosy, but something in my gut told me I had to look. Opened one. Andrea was writing to him with a fury that practically leaped off the screen. I read another. She was calling him a coward, a traitor, a thief. I read the oldest one from 2 years ago. The date was just a week before we started our relationship. She was telling him she was going to sue him. That he couldn't be such a piece of trash as to disappear weeks before the birth. He emptied her accounts, took all the cash, and left her with nothing and an 8-month pregnant belly. I sat down. Or rather, I collapsed. Eric came back from the kitchen and gave me a strange look. He said I looked very pale. And how could I not? Right in front of me was proof that the love of my life had been married to a pregnant woman while swearing eternal love to me. That he had run away like a coward and had a child somewhere. I didn't say anything. Couldn't. I lied to him. I told him I felt sick from something I ate and that I preferred to go home and rest. I wasn't able to face him. Not with my mind racing, my heart in my throat, and my soul shattered into 1,000 pieces. I didn't sleep that night. I read every email, every line, every insult from Andrea, every reply from Eric. And the more I read, the worse I felt. Andrea accused him not only of leaving her but of using her. She told him he married her because her family had money. She told him he always treated her as if she were worth less. That he psychologically abused her throughout her pregnancy and left her alone with a child who wasn't even born yet. She reminded him that he emptied their savings account, that he even took the money they kept at home for emergencies. She demanded that he show up, that he respond, that he at least have the decency to send some money for their child. And Eric's replies. My God, Eric's replies were the definitive proof of the monster she'd been sleeping with for the past 2 years. There was no remorse, no apology. His emails were cold, calculating, and cruel. He manipulated her, told her she was crazy, that she'd made up half the things, and that if he'd left it was because she was suffocating him. In one email, he even had the nerve to tell her that the money he took was his fair compensation for having to put up with her family. He never once asked about the baby. Not once in 2 years. It was as if that child, his own flesh and blood, didn't exist. That night, sitting in the darkness of my living room, illuminated only by the light of that borrowed phone, all the pieces began to fall into place in my head in a twisted and painful way. I realized that I was his new project. His new Andrea. I thought about how, little by little, Eric had infiltrated my finances. First, it was small loans to start a supposed business that never quite took off. Then, the excuse that his bank account was in trouble and he started using my credit cards. I have a good job and have always been careful with money. To him, I wasn't the love of my life. I was an ATM with feelings. A miserable social climber, that's what I was. He had been looking for a victim in this conservative town. Someone vulnerable who would be so dazzled by his attention that they wouldn't ask questions. And I fell for it hook, line, and sinker. The next day I made a decision. I didn't say anything to Eric.